I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous just outside of Toronto, Ontario, and my name is Dustin. When I think of my drinking or my alcoholic life, I drank for 17 years. To sum it up, when I started, I couldn't stop, and I couldn't stop starting. And it took me down a pretty awful path. They say alcoholism is a progressive illness, and that's how it showed up in my life. Until the point where I got very sick, and I was put into a treatment center. And I got out of that treatment center, and I was told to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe I was given the gift of desperation, in or around near that time, and I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did what you guys told me to do. I got a group, I got a sponsor, and I went through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with that sponsor and took the steps. And I can tell you, since listening to you guys, my life has got much better. And that is because of the God of my understanding, Alcoholics Anonymous, and all of you. So I hope that should qualify me. Thank you. So today, our speaker will be sharing for approximately 1 hour. Our speaker comes to us all the way from Australia. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. His name is Roy A.
Wait, can we steps and traditions?
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're going to read the 12 steps, and tonight Trish is going to read those for us. Hi, Trish.
Hi, I'm an alcoholic, a member of the Port Whitby group, and my sobriety date is March 17th, 2010. My name's Trish. The 12 steps. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thanks, Trish. And next up, we will read the 12 traditions, and Darren's going to do that for us.
Good evening, friends. I'm an alcoholic, a member of the Port Whitby group, and my name's Darren. My sobriety date is January the 18th, 2010, and here's the 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for a group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Darren. So I'll try this again here. So this is the speaker portion of our meeting. Our speaker comes all the way from Australia. And without further ado, he'll be speaking for 1 hour. I'd like to introduce Roy A. Welcome, Roy.
Thank you, Dustin. Thanks, Rob, and to all the other group members and the people that are, committed to Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you so much for your service. Yeah, my name's Roy. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm sober through the grace of a loving God and my understanding and the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps do work in my life. And I used to hear older sober members say that they're sober through the grace of a loving God, and I really didn't understand what that meant. And, the longer I stayed around, the more I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it took a long time, and I want to shout out to the Australians that have joined us, Disco Dave and David Cook or Dave Sieb and Tristan and a few others that are on this very important meeting. For me, what it used to be like, what happened and what it's like now, I come from a big family, a small community. Mum was a single parent. My dad wasn't around. I've got 8 brothers and sisters. I've got 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and we were born on a reservation, a reserve, in country New South Wales on the banks of Macquarie River, and it was a struggle. It was tough. We were very welfare dependent. We didn't have a lot growing up. Sometimes we went without food and we went without electricity, and it was a cockroach infested, rat infested, mice infested house, and you got 8 kids sharing a 2.5 bedroom house, and it was we're coming into our winter time now, and I think back growing up, in bitterly cold winters and how we survived. I don't know, but one thing that my mum taught us was that unconditional love, and she tried her best. And this dreaded disease was to take her out. She became an alcoholic, and I remember growing up as a kid. All the family used to come around, and there'd be parties. And back then we had the record players and the big stereos. We had the big records and the small records, and Connie Francis and Patsy Cline and Tammy Wynette and Conway Twitty and Charlie Pride would be all going, and the booze would be flying. There'd be a lot of laughter and carrying on. And I used to say to my brother, I just can't wait. I can't wait to get into this stuff, because what I seen was everyone having fun and a lot of laughter. But the older I got, the more I witnessed, and I witnessed the other side of this disease. Domestic violence. My mum getting knocked out and missing teeth and black eyes and hiding under the bed. And there was smashed furniture and ambulances coming at all hours in the morning, police, and I'm thinking to myself, no, I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to go down that path, and it was it was a terrible way to live, hiding, not knowing what the night's going to bring, and under a bed or in a cupboard or in a closet, and I had my first drink at 15 and my last drink at 34. I drank for 19 years. And, two things I remember about the first drink. There was plenty of puke, vomit. It was everywhere. And the second thing I remember about that first drink was just laying down on my back, and everything was just spinning around. It was going around and around and around. And the more it'd spin, the more I'd vomit, the more I'd puke. And I had it everywhere. I had it in my eyes, in my hair, in my ears, up my nose. And even though it made me violently ill to the point that I've thrown up everywhere, I after a period of time, I couldn't wait to back up and do it again. That hangover is another thing I'll never forget. I just laid on the lounge and just drank cold water, and I just drank cold water for days. And then I'd get a phone call on the Friday, and it'd be my cousins ringing up saying, "Oh, because we're on again." And I said, "What do you got?" And they said, "Oh, we've got a carton, we got a bag of marijuana, and we call them flagons and Moselle. It was really cheap wine." And I'd say to myself, that wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. And I'm off again. And the longer I drink, the worse it become. 2 days after 2 months after I turned 18, I woke up in prison, and I was looking at a long custodial sentence. And I said to myself, how did I get here? And I had, for a long time, coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, looking back over my life, I had low self-esteem. I had no confidence. I felt less than. I thought other people were better than me. And I just didn't fit in. I couldn't fit in. Could not fit in. And that went, all them feelings, all them emotions, they all went out the window when I got on the booze, and I got the taste for it, and that Clark Kent scenario, and I heard it in Alcoholics Anonymous. You get this nerdy looking fellow with low self-esteem, no confidence, can't even look you in the eyes, and then he finds a phone box, and then all of a sudden he comes out this cape, and he's got all these superpowers, and that's how I felt when I was on the booze. That booze made me feel that way, and I friggin' loved it. I was going through the 80s, and I was Michael Jackson on the dance floor. I was God's gift to women, and at the end of the night, I'd be Mike Tyson, and I didn't know who I was. And so I drank right from my teenage years. I woke up in prison, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I get here? And if I was to wrap them feelings up into, the feelings of feeling less than, not good enough, not fitting in, if I was to wrap that up into one word, it'd be afraid. I was extremely afraid. I was afraid of responsibility. I was afraid of success. I was afraid of people. I was afraid of authority. I was afraid of relationships. So I was just this scared, afraid person. And when you're in prison and you're looking at a long custodial sentence, it's one place where you don't want to be afraid, because you can't show your emotions. You can't, that's a sign of weakness. If you're afraid, it is a sign of weakness. And, flip the coin. I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, this beautiful program, and you people teach me through the process of the steps that lack of power was my dilemma. So the more I talk about my lack of power, or the more I talk about being afraid of my defects of character, the more power I receive from a power greater than myself. That's the paradox. I didn't know what that word paradox meant. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I was in year 9, third form, and I was told to get out of school, leave school, you never amount to anything. Get as many signatures as you can and go on your way. I was chucked to the curb. I didn't fit into this system. And, it was everywhere I went, I was just told that I wouldn't amount to anything. And when you start to believe that, when people tell you that you're not meant to be, you're not meant to make it, you're not good enough, you start to believe that. You throw enough mud and it starts to stick. And what happened for me was I was in Sydney, and this guy from Alcoholics Anonymous Well, he was an angel from Alcoholics Anonymous. I call him an angel because he was carrying God's word, divine intervention. And he said to me, Roy, he said, why don't you come to an AA meeting? And you're not allowed to cuss or swear on this thing. And I said, what the F's an AA meeting? He said, you just come along and you sit down, you have a cup of coffee, and you listen to people get up and share their experience, strength, and hope. And they talk about relationships and work, employment, some of the challenges they're having with family. And then he mentioned booze. And when he mentioned booze, I went, no way, no, I'm not going nowhere near your Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, because I was in denial. And I come off this rock bottom, what I consider to be a rock bottom, and I rang him up and I said, listen, mate, just to shut you up, I'll come along to one of your AA meetings. And it was about 20 years ago, and it was in Sydney, New South Wales, for our overseas visitors. And I walked in, and I couldn't look people in the eyes. I was shaken, shivering. My head was all over the place. I had low self-esteem and no confidence, but yet I had this big ego because I judged people. I looked up, I walked in, and I seen God in the Serenity Prayer, and it just jumped out at me. And I'm thinking, yous are all Christians, Bible in one hand, gun in the other one, you're going to force it down my throat. So I went back out and got drunk after that meeting. And the meeting that I come back in on was the 31st of August 2002 on the Central Coast. And I was told to sit up the front, take the cotton wool out of my ears and stick it in my mouth, listen to the similarities and not the differences, and you could hear something that could very well save your life. I sat up the front. There was this older sober member got up, and he said, this is a spiritual program based on spiritual principles. It's a loving God of your own understanding. And something happened at that meeting. It just, Bill describes it in the book where the ice melted, the glacier melted, and something happened, and that's what happened for me. I couldn't use the God thing as an excuse anymore. And I was told to stay away from the first drink and come to plenty of meetings. And I did that for a long, long time, but there was something missing. And Scotty from Philadelphia came out at 7 Hills, him and Bob D, and Scott got up and shared, and he had a baseball cap on back to front, and he jumped up. He said, my name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic. He said, I done everything I was told in AA except 12 things. And I went, oh, this guy's talking to me. And so it was a very, very, being 6 years without, working this program, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It friggin' nearly killed me. I was crazy. I was mad, powder dry, and I went absolutely insane. To a point where I put myself in the psychiatric hospital, and I'm in a health fund, and it cost $13,500 for a 3-week intensive support program. It's only $21 for a big book. Do the maths, work it out. Always looking for easier, softer ways. And so I'm in the fellowship. I'm attending meetings. I'm eating your biscuits. I'm drinking your coffee. I'm using your toilet, and that's all I'm doing. And what a disrespectful way to treat this beautiful program that saved my life. Disrespectful. So I then come to the crossroads in my sobriety, where it was either drink again, take myself out or someone else, or do something about the program. The program of recovery that's outlined in the big book. And I prayed to this thing that scared me out of the rooms. I said, okay, please God, put someone in my path. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that's what happened for me. And it was this lady this lady was put in my path, and I asked her would she be my sponsor. She was such a hardcore big book thumper, you know, and I love ladies. I get on good with women. I've got 5 sisters, you know. I know how to interact with women. And I asked her would she be my sponsor, and she said, Roy, she said, I need to ask you a question, and this will determine whether or not I take you through the book. So you have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. She said, are you willing to go to any lengths to get sober? And she said, call me in the morning, think about it, think seriously about it, and call me in the morning. And, you know, that night I had a restless sleep. I was all these scenarios going through my head. If I say yes, it's work and I don't like work. If it's no, well, then it's continually gambling and doing all these things that were spiritually unfit for me. And I rang her the next morning, and I think I rang about 6:30 a.m. And she said, what the F are you calling me this early for? And I said, look, I had a restless sleep, but I got the answer to your question. And she said, well, what is it going to be, Roy? And I said, yes, I'm willing to go to any lengths to get sober. And she said, well, come to my place. I live on the Central Coast. She lives down in Picton. And for our overseas visitors, it's about an hour, almost 2-hour drive one way. And I had to go to her place every Saturday. And, you know, I hated it. I hated it because I had these resentments towards her, and I was so sick. But then that thing that you know, them words come back to haunt me. You said you would go to any lengths to get sober. This is any lengths. We gets down there. I pulled up in her driveway for the first meeting. She said, bring your big book, by the way. I'm this shaking, shivering, you know, mess. And I walked in and I sat down. She made me a cup of tea. She had a cup of coffee, smoke just flying out of her. She had a big book. I had a big book. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, Roy, I need to ask you another question. And I was like a deer in the headlights. I'm actually shitting myself, you know, and because I'm scared. I'm scared of the unknown, fear. And I mentioned being afraid. Well, I was really afraid this time. And she said, Roy, how do you know you're an alcoholic? I said, what? She said, how do you know you're an alcoholic? I said, I drink a lot of booze. She said, so? I said, I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. She said, so? And I said, oh, I don't know. And she said, that's the answer I'm looking for, Roy. Because I'm guessing your biggest problem is that you think you know. And she smashed me straight up. And she said to me, let's go and find out, shall we? So we went to the doctor's opinion. Not your opinion, not my opinion, not her opinion, the doctor's opinion. You know, and I found out in the doctor's opinion where my disease is. I thought it was at the pub, the club, the dealer's house. You know, I had no idea. So we're going through the doctor's opinion, and I found out that I have this mental obsession. I obsess. And when I give into this obsession, the best way I can describe it is at 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, my stomach, my body's starting to tell me something. You know, and I walk over and I'll put the kettle on and there's a packet of Tim Tams. And I say to myself, you know, because my body's craving for it, it's screaming out for it, it's screaming out for the sugar. So I say to myself, I'll open the Tim Tams and I'll just have one. And what happens? I have the first one, then I'll smash the whole packet. Or I'll leave one there and I'll say, self-justification, I didn't need them all. It's no different to what that obsession is and when my body's craving for alcohol. And I had no idea. I didn't know. And so I had this mental obsession. I obsess. And when I give into that obsession and I have that first one and that first drink, it hits my lips, goes down my throat, and it goes all over my body, right down to my toenails and my fingernails. And I get that warm, fuzzy feeling. And that, from that first drink. And it triggers something in me, unlike my wife and others who I know can drink with impunity. What it triggers in me is a phenomenal craving. And I can't stop. And I said to her, so you're telling me the reason why I'm an alcoholic is because of what the doctor's describing in the book? See, I thought I was an alcoholic because I thieved people's cars, I broke into people's homes, I perpetrated domestic violence. I'm no saint. I'm no saint. I was in prison after I turned 18. 2 months after I turned 18. But I heard someone say that, the first 5 people that wrote the Bible were criminals and murderers. God, I heard in Alcoholics Anonymous that God's closer to sinners than what he is saints. And thank God for that. And so I find out that I have a phenomenal craving, I have mental obsession. And then I find out that I have no mental defence against the first drink. So willpower won't keep me sober. And I needed something else. I needed a power greater than myself. I needed a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And she pointed out to me that the first 100, as described in the book, recovered. What they recovered from? Not recovered from alcoholism. What are they recovered from? They're recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Where does my disease centre? In my mind, but it's also in my body. And I went, oh, okay. And I had to set aside everything that I think I know for an open mind and an open heart to have a new experience. Because I thought I knew everything. I could tell you what's wrong with you and you and you and you. But then when I had to look at myself, oh, dear oh me. So we then go through the book and I start to find out, what makes me tick. And I start to have a look at Roy. See, because I blamed alcohol for everything in my life. It had something to do with it. But then I get down to step 4. After I accept the loving God and my understanding to control and run my life, and I get down to 4 and 5. Then it says that alcohol was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes and conditions. The causes and conditions, I might have had something to do with that. Because someone else wasn't walking into the bottle shop and the pub or the club and starting to pour that alcohol down my throat. It was me. And so it was a real awakening. It was a rude awakening for this alcoholic. And I had to do a lot of work on myself. If I wanted to, and I read this morning's reading in the daily reflections, and it talks about being happy, joyous, and free. And I was restless, irritable, and discontented for a long time. Today I truly believe it's important to share what it used to be like what happened and what it's like now. And the things that have happened in my life today, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. It's been tough. You know, my brother was about 3 years ago. I had his boys, 11-year-old and 12-year-old and 10-year-old boys, my nephews. Anyways, I get this phone call. You better come to Dubbo. Your brother's on life support. You know, through this disease. You know, knocking himself around with drugs and alcohol. And I drive out there, and it's a 5-hour drive, and we're in ICU part of the hospital, and the doctor says if he comes through this and he touches the alcohol or the drugs again, he's not going to last. And he can't read or write, and so I took my big book with me, and I sat there with him. He come through. His hands were tied to the bed, and he had these machines on him, and I said to the doctor, why have you got his hands tied to the bed? And he said, he's thrashing around that much. We had to tie him down. And the next day, he started to come good, and I spent some time with him, and I said to him, mate, if you go back out there, you're gone, And I read the third. We done the third step prayer together out of the book, and 2 months later, 3 months later, he's dead. Younger brother, 41, and I had to come home and tell them boys that your father's not coming back. He's gone. He's passed away. And they just laid on the floor and curled up, and they just howled, and they just wailed, and they cried and sobbed, and there's nothing I could do but just sit there with them. And I said to myself, how lucky am I? Through the grace of a loving God, God has given me the opportunity to raise my family, my kids. And they're not subject to violence or furniture being thrown through the window or police and the ambulance coming all hours in the morning where they have to hide in the closet. And I owe all that to you people in this beautiful program, Alcoholics Anonymous. 18 months ago, my older sister, she was 51. She waited 2 years for a heart transplant. She got it, and within 24 hours she was dead. It was another thing that this program has given me the ability to do is handle whatever comes down the chute. Drink's not going to solve any of that. I was at a function, and I had to go into Newtown, into the RPA, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, and the doctor said, you might want to come with me. We walked down into the anals of the hospital, down in the dark areas, and they took me down to this room, and they said, Roy, you might have to make an identification for us. And I said, yeah, okay. And I walked in this room, and there was this bed, and there was this white sheet, and they pulled the sheet back, and he was my dad. And and I said, when? What happened? And they said, mate, he's been here for 8 days. He's had a massive stroke in one of the flats or the units in Sydney, and he's been there for 8 days, and we didn't even know. And that's what's the moral to that story is that whatever happens, this program has taught me to handle it. It was tough, yes, it was tough. I took him home and buried him back where we come from on country, and I said to myself, I know where you are now, Pa, and you're not going anywhere. So They're some of the things that are real. They're real life stuff, real life experience, and they're the things that I used to drink over. I love. Oh, you'd go for days. You'd go for days over the misery and the morbidness and that type of stuff. And today I don't have to do that. And it in the big book on um, it says that see to it that your relationship with him is sound, and then great things will come to pass. And I had no idea that I was going to do the things I'd done in Alcoholics Anonymous, will continue to do. And it's important to talk about, the successes, because when you're told you're a piece of shit and you won't amount to anything, you're not good enough, and you start to believe that. I just had this little flicker of hope when I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and you people taught me how to dream. You taught me how to love. You taught me patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, unconditional love. And there was this old man, my old Uncle Harold. He's about 90 now. When I first got sober, he said to me, Roy, your kids will teach you how to show love. And I didn't know what he meant, because if you're not shown love, how can you then show love? And my kids, when they were little, they used to come and jump on me, and I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to cuddle them. I didn't know how to kiss them. I really wanted to just push them away. These are my own flesh and blood. But then, over a period of time being in Alcoholics Anonymous, I started to let go. And it's okay to love. It's okay to be vulnerable. I mentioned the word paradox earlier. Being a fall down, crummy drunk, piss the bed drunk, would give me the life that I've got today. Go figure. Flying business class around the world. I was that afraid. This is how my God works. He's got a sense of humour. I was that afraid and that scared of people. In 2015, God put me in front of 65,000 people at Atlanta, Georgia, in a football stadium. And I was the last speaker at the big meeting. I'm shitting myself. I'm pinching myself, saying, how did I get here? I can't do this. All these emotions were going through my head. And I said to myself, the 4-step prayer. God, remove my fears, direct my attention to what you would have me be, let the right words come out and the wrong words stay in. And I got up there and I shared my experience, think and hope in front of 60,000+ people. This is a little Aboriginal person that come from a reserve that was told you wouldn't amount to anything. I presented a paper at the United Nations in New York and Geneva on behalf of all my Indigenous people in Australia, in this country. The home of human rights and social justice. Someone who was told to get out of school, you're not going to amount to anything. Don't sit there and tell me that this program doesn't work if I don't put them steps in my life. I put them steps in my life and great things will come to pass. That's what the book says. There's promises. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave me. Intuitively will know how to handle situations that used to baffle me. And these extract promises. These are things that are working in my life today. I've got kids today who love me. I've got a 13-year-old, sorry, actually, no, she's 15-year-old daughter. She pushes my buttons, and I'm trying to be, and sometimes I don't know how to be a dad. I can't just Google and say how to be a dad. Sometimes I'm a deadbeat dad. You know, my wife says to me, Roy, please grow up. Grow up. But I am growing up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm growing up in AA. My sponsor, when she took me through the process of the steps, she said, Roy, I'm taking you through these steps on, for one reason only. And I said, what's that? She said, you go out and work with as many alcoholics as you can and take them through the process of these steps. And that's what I do today. In order to keep this, I've got to give it away. I'm sitting in business class on a Qantas flight going to New York, and these air hostesses come up and, hi, Mr. RC, would you like a drink? And I said, I'll just have a sparkly water. And then they turn around and give me these pajamas, and I was thinking, pajamas? What am I? Are these? Do these cost anything? She said, no, they're complimentary. They're free. And I said, well, you better give me about 5 or 6 pairs because I've got a big family, And I share that because some of this stuff is unbelievable. I've started in July last year. Don't worry about COVID-19. In July last year, I lost my job. I was there for 12 years. And I didn't panic. I reverted back to the program. Fear of people on economic insecurity will lead me. Intuitively would know how to handle situations that used to baffle me. So what do? I start my own business. I've got relationships, I've got contacts, I hand it all over to a power greater than myself, and things start to fall into place. And I heard in Alcoholics Anonymous, if it works, if it doesn't work out, it's Roy's will, but if it does, it's God's will. And this program, this fellowship, the joy that I get today, and that reading, I was a little bit nervous coming on this morning, Dustin and Rob, and I said to myself, okay, please God, direct my thinking, work through me to carry your message. And I go to that reading, and it's about being happy, joyous and free. And the doctor's opinion tells me that my disease centers in my mind. The hardest thing to open in the world isn't a safe, because you can get a combination for a safe. The hardest thing in the world to open is a closed mind, especially the mind of a chronic alcoholic. They will go to the end. The book says alcoholic torture. When you torture someone, you don't kill them. You take them right to the end, then you bring them back. Then you take them right to the end, then you bring them back. That's exactly what happened to me. Alcoholic torture took me right to the end, but then brought me back. And then I'd do the same old thing. And it was crazy. It was a nightmare. And that's what I've got a couple of, sponsees that are on this meeting today. And I didn't know what my purpose was. I come into Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know who I was, didn't know what I was meant to do until I sat around long enough, done the work, and then I found out what my purpose is. And it says my primary purpose, my number one purpose, not to be the president, not to own $1 million, not to have 13 houses. My primary purpose, number one purpose, is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. How do I do that? I'm a member of a group. I open up Saturdays. I work with other sponsees, Unity Service Recovery. I take them through the steps, and to watch them grow is just truly, truly amazing. help my fellows. You know, I'm not very good at relationships. You know, I had to do a lot of work on myself through through the process of these steps, and I, I I had to make amends, and I had to make amends to a lot of people. I hurt a lot of people, you know, and I had this thing bugging me. I went through the process of the steps with my sponsor, and then I rang this closed mouth friend and I said, look, something's really bugging me. And he said, Roy, what's up? And I said, I stole money when I was on school experience, and I was only young, and it was over 40 years ago, and I stole money from this company, and I said, it's bugging me. And he said, Roy, you have to make a financial amends. If that's bugging you, you got to make it right. And I said, mate, it was over 40 years ago. And he said, come on, Roy, you know, what does the program teach us? And I said, okay. And it was this old guy back home in this country town where I come from, and I was going out to play golf, and I'm driving along. It was a beautiful, beautiful summer's day, and I looked over, driving past his house, and this old guy's out the front watering his lawn. And I went, okay. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I said to myself, okay, God, you know, I had sweaty palms, and I knew what I had to do. And I pulled over and I walked across the road, and I had $150 in my pocket. And I said to him, hello, Mr. Darney. And he looked at me and he said, Roy. And I said, yes. And he said, mate, I haven't seen you for a long, long time. How you been? I said, really good. And I said, can I just have a word with you for a moment? He said, sure, what's up? And I said, remember all them years ago when I worked in your timber yard? He said, yes, I do. And I was in year 7 on a school experience, work experience. I said, Mr. Darney, I stole money from you. And he looked at me, and I give him this, and I said, here it is, $150. And he almost had tears in his eyes. And he said, Roy, what am I supposed to do with this money? And I said, Mr. Darney, I don't know, it's not mine, it's yours. I took it from you, and I'm returning it. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm in a fellowship, and a part of the process, there's 12 steps. And I said, I'm at a certain step where I have to start making financial amends and amends to people like you. And I give him that $150, and I thought he was going to start crying. He said, what am I supposed to do with this? He said, can I donate it back to your people? Or what am I meant to do with it? And I said, it's yours. You do what you want with it. And thank you very much for your time. And I drove away, and I just had this sense of peace that come in. And it's hard to describe. It's something that you have to feel. And that night I drove to Orange to an AA meeting, and it was a steps meeting. And it was about an hour away from the community where I was, and I walked into that meeting, and it was a steps meeting, and they were on step 9, making amends. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is how God works in my life. You know, God is doing for me what I could not do for myself. And my prayers, I ask Him God in my prayers every morning, you know, to show me the way of inspiration. Give me that aspiration to help others. And it's been an amazing journey, I talked about, you know, starting a business last year. The day I lost my job, I was told that you know, my job's finished. Was the day the Commonwealth Bank rang me up and said, congratulations, Roy, we're going to give you $600,000 to buy a house. And I went home to my wife and I said, "Love, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news." And she said, "Well, what's the good news?" I said, "You're going to be a homeowner." And she said, "What's the bad news?" I said, "I lost my job." And, you should have seen her face. And it was just, it was unbelievable. But she knows that I'm in a program where, um, regardless of what happens, I front up, I keep going. And for me, pain in recovery is really, really important. So if you're new or near new, for me and my experience, the pain is a really important part of growing. It talks about the touchstone the touchstone to growth is pain. And I've been through a lot of pain in Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of that stuff I brought on myself. Like I said earlier, I'm no saint. And uh, if it was meant to be easy, we'd be having meetings at football stadiums. But we're not. We it, it's tough. It's tough being constantly looking at yourself, and working with others. And I know that it's up here, it's in my mind. My disease center's there. If I'm working with someone who's on this meeting and, he lost his mum the other day. He's a member of our group and I love him dearly and, he's a member of our group. He's going through the steps and I'm so proud of him. So proud of him. If someone had cancer and the doctors, you went to the doctors and they diagnosed you and said, "Well, you got 3 months to live," and the first thing I'd say to the doctor is, "Well, is there any way of recovering from this thing?" And if you turned around and said, "Well, there is. You've got to follow these directions." Because on page 19 of the big book, it says, we have clear-cut directions on how we recovered. And if I had cancer and he said, and it was in that book, follow these directions and you can recover, well, you know what? I'd read 1,000 books, but not the alcoholic, not the chronic alcoholic. We'll rather go to the end than to do that work. And that's why it's really, really important for me to talk about, recovery. I know how to drink. I know how to end up in tight places. I know how to end up in the gutter. I know how to, I know the war stories. I've lived it. My experience. I've been there. But I want to talk about recovery. And I heard someone say in Alcoholics Anonymous that you can question my opinions. Anybody can question my opinions, but you can't question my experiences, nor can I question yours on what you've been through in order to get into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I cannot get enough, because the older sober members tell me, "Roy, keep coming back because the best is yet to come." And I'm thinking, can it get any better than this? How can it get better than this? And it does. It does get better. And I always listen for them gems. The gems that come from the older sober members. And someone said to me, if you change the way you think, you'll change the way you feel. I went, oh, okay. How do you do that? Change the way you think, you change the way you feel. And there's this, you guys from Canada may have heard that story about the two wolves. You know, where the young fella goes up to his grandfather and says, "I feel like I've got two wolves inside of me, a good one and a bad one." You know, and the grandfather says, "Well, do you know which one's going to win?" And the young fella says to his grandfather, "No, Pop, I don't." And the grandfather says, "The one you feed the most." And that's why I've got to feed within me. I've got to feed, that positivity. I've got to live and breathe that, and it attracts people. The moment I go into that negativity, then I'm no useful. I'm no use to anybody. And I push the boundaries. And like I said, if it works, it's God's will. If it doesn't, it's just my will. It's my ego. And I've lost family members, and continue to lose family members. If I pick up a drink, if I go out and pick up a drink, see, even if I get COVID-19, I don't know whether I'll live or I die. But if I go and pick up a drink, I know what it's going to do to me. It will kill me. I have no second guesses about that. Over 17 and a half years clean and sober, I know that if I go out and pick up the drink, I'm gone. It will kill me. Dead set kill me. And we've built our new house and we're moving into that soon. And I often think about the people that have gone before me. My poor old mum. She never had an opportunity to walk into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. In some of them country towns where I come from, the meetings are non-existent. They don't have AA meetings. So when I go back, sometimes I'm other people's big book. And that's how this thing works. I've got a purpose today, and I love coming into AA meetings. I love meeting new people, and I love pushing the boundaries. Life's a journey. It's not about the destination. It's about what happens along the way. I've had so much fun in Alcoholics Anonymous. So much fun. And all I have to do, to keep this is work with others. And look, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have challenging days. I do. My disease, it comes in other areas of my life, whether it's food, and internet, and I still have them challenges today. But I try to work with my fellows. I try to work with others, and things fall into place. The most important people to me, outside my family is newcomers. Our group is the Central Coast Spirituality Career Beginners meeting, 11 o'clock at Watanabe, a place called Watanabe on the Central Coast. And, we open that meeting predominantly for the newcomer. Before this COVID-19, we would have had 6, maybe 7 people come to their first ever meeting. And it was unbelievable how many people we started to attract through the doors, before this COVID-19. I hear people say, I wouldn't like to get sober now with this COVID-19. Well, hang on. If you're a chronic alcoholic, you tell me when's a good time to get sober. Because it is a challenging, no matter where you are, where you come from, any time to get sober is a challenging time. And And after this lockdown, I can't wait to get back to the face-to-face meetings. I'm going to miss you guys. The Zoom's been brilliant for this. Bob Darrell, I was listening to Bob Darrell the other week, and he said it's like McDonald's, and people probably heard it. It's good for a little while, but if you eat too much of it, it'll make you sick. And I related to that. Too much of it, it's not good for me. So I want to get back to my face-to-face meetings. And I remember working with a sponsee, and he said to me, he shared something with me, and he said, Roy, he said, I made amends to my mum. And he said, I sat down with my mum and I said, his mum said to him, the proudest moment in my life was when you was born. And he said, the saddest moment in my life is when I had to come and pick you up from a suicide attempt. And that's what this program does. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous does. It changes people's lives. Changes people's lives. It heals families, it heals communities. It heals peoples and individuals. And I'm not saying people can disagree with me. They probably will disagree with me. But at the end of the day, all I can share is my experience, strength, and hope. And I can't do this alone. It says we. I thought I could do it alone, and I tried for a long, long time. And I don't like giving advice from the floor. I just shared my experience, strength, and hope. For someone that wasn't meant to achieve, I tell you what, I look at my list now, and it's truly, truly amazing. I watched that movie, The Bucket List, the other day, and with Morgan Freeman and the other guy, and it was just it put into perspective, I guess, life. What is life really about? Is it about making money, or is it about helping others? And that first thing is a byproduct of helping others. And I'm coming close to the end of my time. I think there's a couple of minutes left. So without going into resentment time, I want to close with a story. And I'm not a poet, and I was at a meeting once in Sydney, and it was death by PowerPoint. This guy was up giving a presentation, and it was like I just picked my pen up and it started writing, this pen, and what I had in front of me was this beautiful poem, and it was, I truly believe it was a gift from God, my God, and a gift from my ancestors. And the reason why it was a gift was because I have to give it away and I have to share it with others. And I looked at it and I just couldn't believe it. It was his poem in front of me, and I shared it in front of in Atlanta, Georgia, in 2015. And it says that the poem's titled "If You Have a Dream, You Have a Vision," and it goes like this. It says, "If you have a dream and a vision, make it real, make it a mission. You'll have your ups and your downs, but don't let it knock you around. If you believe it's possible, then fight and tussle to allow it to be colossal. So you may have to be bold and mean if you believe in this dream. You may have fear whispering in your ear, but tell it to go away because you're not wanted here. For I found my place in this earth. It is my role to inspire you to challenge your self-worth. So go on your way and move towards your vision, and don't let anyone stop you from achieving your mission. For it is God who will be our final judge, for it is he who holds no grudge. So take the first step, as hard as it may be. It starts today with no more delays, for delays and excuses are for those that are leaners. But that does not include you, because you are all dreamers." Thank you very much, and God bless. Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, Rob.